World War II was one of the most horrifying wars in human history. The war claimed over 70 million lives and almost destroyed the world. But that didn't stop people from spreading rumors and myths about the deadliest conflict on Earth. And that's exactly what we are going to look at in this video. We'll be sharing some of the most shocking myths about World War II that you probably haven't heard of. So without further ado, let's get right into it. The Nazi Germany army never attacked Russia in World War II. This is one of the biggest myths regarding World War II and has been the subject of many conspiracy theories. However, this couldn't be any further from the truth. On June 1941, German troops crossed the border into the Soviet Union, marking the beginning of Operation Barbarossa. Despite some initial successes, the invasion quickly turned into a disaster for the Germans as they faced fierce resistance from the Soviets. Hitler had grossly underestimated the vastness of the Soviet Union and the strength of its military. The German troops were forced to retreat after fighting through the harsh Russian winter and suffering heavy casualties. The disastrous invasion led to the deaths of over 2.5 million German soldiers. It was then until 1943 that the Germans stopped attacking the Soviets and instead focused on defending their occupied territories. The United States dropped a third atomic bomb on Japan. The United States only used 2 atomic bombs during World War II, both of which were dropped on Japanese cities. The first bomb was dropped on Hiroshima on August 6, 1945, and the second on Nagasaki on August 9, 1945. Although there have been claims that a third bomb was dropped on the Japanese city of Kokura, this is nothing but a myth. The US planned to drop a third bomb on Kokura, but the target was changed to Nagasaki when the weather conditions at Kokura were found to be unsuitable for the nuclear test. The B-29 bomber carrying the device had to turn back due to bad weather and ended up dropping the bomb on Nagasaki instead. There are also other claims that the US government has covered up the use of a third atomic bomb out of fear of causing panic, or that it was used as a test run before the actual bombing of Nagasaki. However, these claims have no factual basis and have been debunked by historians and scientists alike. The last official widow of Adolf Hitler still lives in Germany. This is another popular myth regarding the end of Adolf Hitler and his wife, Eva Braun. After Hitler's suicide in the bunker on April 30, 1945, Eva Braun also took her own life. They were both cremated and their ashes were scattered by the Soviet authorities. Despite this, there have been numerous sightings of Hitler and even claims that he fathered children after his supposed death. One such claim is that Hitler had a daughter named Lutz, who now lives in Argentina under the alias Maria del Carmen. These claims have no evidence to support them and are widely regarded as false. In fact, Eva Braun's remains were recently discovered and identified, providing conclusive proof that she perished alongside Hitler. Hitler was an atheist. Despite the widespread belief that Hitler was an atheist, this is not true. Hitler was actually a Roman Catholic and even attended church regularly. He viewed Christianity as a positive force in German culture and history, despite his opposition to the teachings of Jesus Christ. During his youth, Hitler became increasingly anti-Semitic and blamed the Jews for Germany's economic problems. However, he remained a Roman Catholic throughout his life. He even made several references to God and religion in his speeches and writings. For example, in Mein Kampf, he wrote, "Providence has placed in my hands the leadership of the German nation." Hitler's relationship with the Catholic Church was complex, and he carefully cultivated an image of himself as a defender of traditional values and beliefs. However, his policies towards Jews and other minorities were diametrically opposed to Christian teachings. Anne Frank's diary was written entirely during her time in hiding. The diary of Anne Frank, a young Jewish girl who died in the Holocaust, has become one of the most well-known accounts of the atrocities committed during World War II. However, there is a common myth that the entire diary was written while Anne Frank was in hiding. This is not entirely accurate. While the majority of the diary entries were written while Anne and her family were hiding from the Nazis in Amsterdam, the very last entry was written in September 1944. At this point, they were no longer in hiding as the family had been betrayed and arrested by the Dutch resistance. The family was transported to various concentration camps, including Bergen-Belsen, where Anne ultimately died of starvation and typhus at the age of 15. It was here that Anne's diary ended. The myth likely arose because of the famous adaptation of her diary published in 1952, which begins and ends with the family in hiding. However, Anne's full story, including her time in the concentration camps, is documented in other sources and provides a more complete picture of her experiences during World War II. Hitler's deputy, Rudolf Hess, flew to Scotland on a peace mission. On May 1941, Rudolf Hess, Hitler's deputy, flew to Scotland in an attempt to negotiate peace between Britain and Germany. This bizarre incident, known as the Hess Mission, has been the subject of much speculation and myth-making. However, the real story is even more extraordinary. Hess believed that he had the support of the 14th Duke of Hamilton, a prominent Scottish aristocrat, to act as an intermediary between Britain and Germany. He hoped to secure a negotiated peace with Britain, which would allow Germany to focus on its war against the Soviet Union. However, Hess's mission was doomed from the start. He was arrested as a spy upon arrival in Scotland and spent the rest of the war in captivity. The true motives behind Hess's flight to Scotland remain a mystery, but it is clear that he acted without Hitler's approval, and his actions were misguided and dangerous. Before starting the war, Mussolini visited the grave of Napoleon Bonaparte. This is a popular myth that has been perpetuated by the fact that Benito Mussolini, the Italian dictator, was a self-proclaimed heir to the Roman Empire and was obsessed with ancient Rome. He saw himself as a new Caesar and tried to emulate the grandeur of ancient Rome in his own regime. Mussolini also admired Napoleon Bonaparte, the French emperor who had conquered much of Europe in the early 19th century. Napoleon's tomb is located in a small village in the French Alps, far from the Italian border. So it is highly unlikely that Mussolini would have visited Napoleon's grave before starting the war. Furthermore, there are no historical records indicating that Mussolini ever visited Napoleon's tomb or even expressed any particular interest in doing so. The myth likely arose from Mussolini's admiration for Napoleon and his desire to be seen as the heir to the Roman Empire. King George VI was a reluctant wartime monarch. During World War II, King George VI of England played an important role in maintaining morale and unity in the country. Despite the myth that he was a reluctant wartime monarch, this could not be further from the truth. In fact, George VI was a staunch supporter of the war effort and worked tirelessly to contribute to the Allied victory. Upon the outbreak of war in 1939, the king immediately addressed the nation on the radio, declaring that the British Empire would stand by its obligations to defend Poland. He also approved the plan to evacuate British children from major cities to the countryside in the event of a German invasion. George VI's unwavering commitment to the war effort helped to rally the British people during their darkest hours, and his legacy as a wartime monarch continues to be celebrated today. To learn more about World War II and its impact on our world, stay tuned for more videos and check out our other content. Thank you for watching and see you next time.